How we doing, Kipsters? This Mr. Agnew here. We got a few things that we're going to talk about. No, we're not going to talk about Harry Potter. No, we're not going to talk about my dirty shoes. No, we're not going to talk about scissors or a fork. I'm not going to give you any money right now today, but we are going to talk a little bit about measurement. I don't even know if that has an E in it. Measurement. So when we measure the length of things. So many of you thought about maybe using a ruler, especially a centimeter ruler that has the smaller increments on this side. If you have not picked up a centimeter ruler, we need to get you one of those. Okay? So make sure you get a centimeter ruler. And I'm curious about just measuring some length of things. Now, if you have a centimeter ruler, it's going to be really, really easy. You start at one endpoint, and it's going to go to the other endpoint. Now, when I line this up to measure, you got to look really, really closely. You're not going to start at the 1, you're going to start at the 0. When we start at the 0, we line it up nice and slow. This is one endpoint, and it goes all the way to this endpoint. So now my line looks like this. If I have it, it's right about this long. And that's the length of my book. This is an endpoint. The endpoints are the end. Okay, it can be the beginning or the end, but it's both called the end point. End point. That's one of those vocabulary words. So now when we're going to actually measure that, if I have a centimeter ruler, I'm going to line it up at the 0, and I'm going to go all the way to the end. And this one right here is going to be 20 centimeters. 20 centimeters. Now that's super easy if you have a ruler. Especially if it's a centimeter ruler, it's super easy. You just have to line it up at the 0, not at the 1. You start at the 0. So here's a little simple little way. If you start at the 0, not at the 1. A lot of children want to line up at the 1. No, 0. Start at the 0. Mr. Agnew, I don't have a ruler. That's completely okay. That's completely okay. You might remember using these centimeter sticks. This is 10 centimeters. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to cut this. So now I have 1 centimeter cube, 2 centimeter cubes, 3 centimeter cubes, 4 centimeter cubes. And if I was to keep going, you can notice that each one of these is right at 1 centimeter. Right at 1 centimeter. So I could line all of these up. I could line all of these up to measure that. If I have a longer one, I can measure this one. There's 10 centimeters. And if I put a second one on, that is 20 centimeters. Now this is super, super important. If I had any spaces right there between it, it's not going to be an accurate measurement. And that would look like now it's actually 21 centimeters, which is not correct. So make sure we put it all the way together. So that's one of our big rules. That's one of our big rules when we're measuring, whether we're measuring a book, whether we're measuring a shoe or scissors or whatever we're measuring. You want to have no gaps. You want to have no gaps. That's super, super important. So we talked about endpoints. We talked about endpoints, and we talked about no gaps when we're using different units to measure. So these are base 10 blocks. If I was to cut those all up, and I line these up, if I was to line them up like this, and I leave all my spaces, it's not going to be an accurate measurement, because you could tell, even if I showed more, I'll cut the rest of them out just to show you. Actually, to tell you the truth, I've never cut up a base 10 block. Okay? So if I line these up like this and I spread them out evenly, and they're all spread out, it's going to look like there's how many? 1 centimeter long, 2 centimeters long, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to look like it's 10 centimeters long when we already measured and we know It's not 10 centimeters long. It's 20 centimeters long from one endpoint to the other endpoint. So make sure you have no gaps. No gaps. Now a strategy that you can use is called mark and move. Let's see if I can use a different black that shows up a little bit better. A strategy you can use to measure is called mark and move. We're going to get a little bit more into that later, but mark and move basically looks like this. If I'm measuring my book and I have my line drawn, I can slide this out of the way for mark and move. Let's clear the board a little bit. Where'd my eraser go? I'll use my hand. Let's clear my board a little bit. We need a 20 centimeter long line so I can show you mark and move. Okay, measuring my Harry Potter book. 20 centimeters. We went from one endpoint at the 0 to the next endpoint right there, 20 centimeters. Make my straight line. Boom. Okay, now I have my 20 centimeter line. One endpoint is one side, one endpoint is the other. And this strategy is called mark and move. Because I'm real curious to see how long this is, but say I only have one of these little centimeter cubes. Say I only have one of these little cubes. So here's how it would work. You would line it up at the end, and I hold it with one finger, and I mark it with the other. And now I slide it over just a little bit. Mark and move. Now I got to do it again. Mark and move. Mark and move. And so it just looks like this all the way down, and you can start to see that each time I mark it and I move it, it's going to be the exact same length apart. They're all evenly spaced. See that? They're all evenly spaced because I marked and moved it. Now, I took my time and lined it up very, very carefully, each one. It's not like I just had my 20 centimeter line. It's not like this. I didn't just go like this. Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's not what I did. That's not what I did. What I did is I lined it up very carefully all the way through. Now, a lot of children are going to get lazy, and they get a little bit toward it, and then they kind of stop marking and moving it, and they're not as exact. And then your measurement isn't as exact either. Okay? So you got to do it all the way through to the very, very end point. Looks like I got one or two more. And then I can come back and I can tell that every space is all the way across. Every space all the way across is nice and even. That's called mark and move, and that's if I only have one little centimeter cube. So this comes out to being 20 centimeters. Mr. Agnew, what if I don't have a centimeter cube? How can I measure it? Let's use something else to measure. Okay, let's measure this book. We knew that the book was 20 centimeters. This is a centimeter cube. It came out to 20 centimeters. This is a centimeter ruler. From one endpoint to the next endpoint, it came to 20 centimeters. Mr. Agnew, I don't have a centimeter cube, but I'm still curious to see how long my book is. You can use something else as well. So here's a Lego. Here's a Lego. You can mark and move using your Lego from one endpoint to the next. Line it up, mark, and move. Line it up, mark, and move. Line it up, mark, and move. And it goes just like that. It's the same exact strategy, except this time it is, the first one started right here, so let's put the first one. Sometimes you gotta mark the first one too. This is one endpoint, and this was the last endpoint. So it went from endpoint to endpoint, and I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you look closely, this is the first one. There's that first Lego. Here's the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. I'm going all the way to the endpoint, sixth one. So this is 20 centimeters long, but it's also 6 yellow Legos long. I love Legos. I love Legos. But what happens if I have a different Lego? Now look closely. Okay, we knew that it was 6 Legos. Now I'm going to try to use a little bit of a smaller Lego. I wonder if you can predict how many Legos this one would be. Okay, this Lego is 4 across. This Lego is only 2 across. So there's 8 total dots on this one, 4 total dots on this one. I'm going to use it, I'm going to line it up. Let's see how many this one is. If this was 6 yellow cubes, yellow Legos, this one should be a little bit more, I think. 1, mark and move. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if I went all the way from this endpoint to this endpoint, that was actually 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? And I kind of rushed on that one. I rushed it a little bit. You can tell because this space looks a little bit bigger than some of the other spaces. I took my time on this one, and it came out nice and even. I took my time when I was using my centimeter cubes, and they were very evenly spaced. This one I rushed it a little bit, but this one, now the book, it was 20 centimeters long. It was 6 yellow Legos long, and it was 12 red Legos long. Now something to really be careful of. When I measured, on one measurement I used only the centimeter cubes. On the second measurement I used only my yellow Legos. On the third one I used only my red Legos. Now I could use a paper clip. If I did another measurement I could do a paper clip. But I can't mix and match these. I can't measure sometimes with the yellow. This would not work. This would not work. I can't do that to measure. Because then it's going to look like, well, there's not the same unit. You have to use the same unit in our mark and move strategy. So it's called mark and move. And on every single time that I measured, I used the same unit. The same unit was a centimeter cube the first time, a yellow Lego the second time, a red Lego the third time. Okay? I could use a paper clip. I could measure with forks. So the book is about 1 fork long. You can measure with anything, but it has to be the same unit. It has to be the same unit. That's a big reason why the ruler becomes very, very, very helpful. Now I remind you, when we're measuring something, let's measure this shoe. Big ol' Agnew's Mr. Shoe. Agnew's shoe. Okay? Alright, first of all I'm going to use the ruler because that's a standard measurement tool. And I'm going to focus on the centimeter side. So I'm going to line it up, make sure it's nice and straight. And I put one little line here. And I'm going to line it up and I put one little line here. Now I'm going to draw the line to connect them. That's a big shoe. Alright, now I'm going to draw the lines to connect them. Okay? When I use my centimeter ruler, I go from the 0 first, not the 1. Remember, start at 0, not 1. We start at 0 all the way over on this right here at the end. That is an end point. Okay, here's a little clue. Those are end points. this right here is an end point. So you have to measure from one end point to one end point. Now this one shows from the 0 all the way across. This looks like it is about 30 centimeters. It's about 30 centimeters. Let's measure with our 10 centimeter cube. Okay, this is 10 centimeters, because if we lined all these up, y'all saw me cut one apart. If we lined all of these up, and I probably lost one or two around here somewhere. If I lined all those up, that's 10 centimeters. So I'm just going to use a 10 centimeter cube because it's all together. See if you can remember the name of the strategy. I line it up, I mark, and then I move. I mark, and then I move. So that way I can measure things that are really long with only having one. This was 10, this was 10, and this was 10. 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 10 centimeters. 10 plus 10 plus 10, 30. So we know we did that one correctly. Cool. All right. Now, what if I was using pennies? If I was using pennies to measure, so we knew that my shoe was 30 centimeters. I wonder how many pennies it is. So I put a blank. Now I have to use all pennies. I can't start using some quarters, because if I start lining those up, they're not the same size. So they have to be the same size. Alright, so here are my pennies. Line this one up. Now, no gaps. That's a big thing. No gaps. Put them all together. No gaps. Line them up. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 pennies long, 7 pennies long, 8 pennies long, 9 pennies long, 10 pennies long, 11 pennies long. I don't have any more pennies. What am I going to do? I can keep measuring. All I have to do, mark. Watch, I'm just going to take one from the back side. Right there. There we go. Now I'm going to take it from the back side. That's 11, because this was 10. That was 10 pennies. Now I'm going to put a little line right here. This is going to be 11. Mark and move. 12. Mark and move. 13. Mark and move. 14. Mark and move. 15. Mark and move. 16. I kind of smudged it a little bit, but it's right there. So this came out to 16 pennies long, because 10 is what I had first. I ran out of pennies, so I just used my mark and move strategy. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It should be a little bit clearer, but my marker got smudged. So there are my pennies. So that was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Because we just marked and moved, I ran out of pennies. If I was to use quarters, what do you think a good estimate would be? A good estimate. Now, an estimate's like a smart guess. If I was to use quarters, we knew that it was 16 pennies. If I was to use quarters, I wonder how many quarters it would be. I wonder how many quarters it would be. Because the quarter, look, it's very big. It's much bigger than the penny. I think we would have fewer quarters. So far I have 4. 4 quarters was equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pennies. So that maybe gives you a little bit of an estimate. I think my estimate, if I was to make a smart guess, I'm using the pennies to help me with my quarter estimate. Smart guess, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's mark and move. I would say it's going to be about 12. I don't quite know yet, but that is my estimate. My estimate is at about 12 quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. I ran out, so let's just mark and move. Right there. Good. Let's move that out of the way. Good. Good. Mark and move, mark and move, mark and move. all the way to the end. A lot of kids want to stop a little bit and get kind of lazy. You have to keep marking and moving it as slow as you can. Okay? I'm going actually a little bit faster than I want to because I don't want this video to get too long on you guys. Okay, so we had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Ah, my estimate was 13. Here's my lines. And these should be my numbers in between. Okay, so it came out to 13 quarters. The actual measurement was 13 quarters long. Guys, you can use anything to measure. We can use Legos, we can use smaller Legos, we can use quarters, we can use pennies, we can use a centimeter ruler, which is super easy. We can use base 10 blocks, which is cool. We even used a fork to measure a book. That's crazy. We even measured a shoe. You can measure all types of things, but there's a couple things I want to remind you of. Okay? An estimate is a smart guess. We made a smart guess with our quarters. We guessed 12 as our estimate, but it actually came out to 13. That's okay. End points is another one I want to remind you of. End to end is where we measure. Okay? And we talked about the mark and move strategy. Super cool. And then using a ruler, we always start at the 0, not at the 1. Okay? We got a lot of things here. We did a lot really, really quick. We're going to go over that in class today. Make sure you have your questions ready to go. Awesome. I love you guys. We will see you soon. There it is. Bye-bye.